Disclaimer: this content is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised. It all started one quiet evening in the kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator, the soft patter of rain outside, and the faint sound of a song playing in the background. She thought she was alone. For a moment, she let herself drift, lost in thought, lost in memories she had buried long ago. But when she turned around, someone was standing there, someone who wasn't supposed to see her like that. It was her stepson, grown now, no longer the shy boy she once knew. The air froze between them, thick with confusion and unspoken tension. He didn't say a word, and neither did she. There was something in his eyes, not judgment, but something else she couldn't quite name. A question. A recognition. A silence that said too much. For years, she had tried to keep her emotions locked away, keeping things proper, controlled, predictable. But that night changed everything. Suddenly, the walls she had built around herself didn't feel strong enough anymore. She began to notice things she hadn't before: how kind he was, how grown-up he had become, how his presence filled the empty corners of the house she used to wander alone. And yet, she couldn't shake the guilt that followed. Was it wrong to feel this way, to find warmth in someone who reminded her what it felt like to be seen again? Or was it simply human, to crave connection, even in unexpected places? As the story unfolds, we'll see how one moment of misunderstanding can turn into a journey of self-discovery, emotional boundaries, and redemption. Was it just an innocent mistake that led to awkward silence, or the beginning of something that would challenge everything they both believed in? The next morning, the kitchen felt different. The same sunlight came through the window, but everything between them had changed. She stood by the counter, pretending to be busy with the coffee pot, trying to act like nothing had happened. But inside, her heart was restless. Every small sound, the creak of the floor, the clink of a spoon, reminded her of last night. He walked in quietly, his usual easy smile replaced by something uncertain. "Morning," he said softly. She looked up, forcing a smile, but her voice wavered when she answered. It was the kind of awkward silence that makes time feel heavy. Both of them wanted to say something, yet neither knew what words could make sense of what they'd felt in that brief moment. To distract herself, she asked about his work, about the errands he had planned, about anything that could steer the conversation away. But his answers were short, thoughtful. His eyes lingered a second too long, as if searching for something unspoken. It made her wonder, was he feeling the same confusion she was trying so hard to hide? That day, she couldn't focus. The memory kept returning, the look in his eyes, the quiet stillness, the feeling that something invisible had shifted between them. She told herself it was just embarrassment, nothing more. But deep down, she knew that wasn't the whole truth. Later that week, they found themselves alone again, this time in the garden. The rain had stopped, and the air smelled fresh, almost new. He helped her carry a box of old photo albums from the shed. When one slipped from her hands, pictures scattered across the grass, pictures of happier times, of her younger self, of her late husband. He bent down to help, and for a second their hands touched. Neither pulled away. He looked at one of the old photos and smiled faintly. "You used to laugh a lot," he said. She didn't answer, just nodded, her throat tight. It had been years since someone noticed the quiet sadness behind her smiles. That small moment, his noticing, meant more than he could have imagined. As the sun began to set, the light softened around them. The house felt quiet again, like it was holding its breath. She wanted to say something honest, something that could release the tension pressing on her chest, but she stopped herself. It wasn't time yet. Inside, she made tea and tried to calm her thoughts, but the questions wouldn't leave her alone. Was this just a passing feeling? Or was it the beginning of something she couldn't control? Days passed, but the air between them never really cleared. Every conversation felt like walking on thin ice, careful, slow, and uncertain. She caught herself watching him more than she should, noticing the way he laughed at small things, the way he seemed to bring life into a house that had grown too quiet. It scared her, not because of what she felt, but because she didn't understand it. She was older, cautious, and guarded. He was still young, open-hearted, and too honest for his own good. One evening, they sat across from each other at the dining table. The television murmured faintly in the background, but neither of them was really listening. He asked about her late husband, how they met, what he was like. It had been a long time since anyone had asked her that. The memories felt heavy, but she spoke softly, her eyes distant. When she finished, he said, almost shyly, "He must have loved you a lot." That simple line caught her off guard. There was no pity in his tone, only quiet respect. She smiled faintly, but it was the kind of smile that hides more than it reveals. That night, after he went to bed, she stayed up by the window, staring at the soft glow of the streetlights. She kept asking herself, why did his presence stir emotions she thought were long gone? Was it loneliness, or something deeper she was afraid to name? The next day, a new tension arrived in the form of a visitor, his friend from college, a cheerful woman named Mia. She came by to drop off a few things, but her warmth and easy laughter filled the house. For the first time, she noticed something else, jealousy. She didn't mean to feel it, but watching him smile at someone else made her realize just how close her emotions were to the surface. Later, when Mia left, he found her in the kitchen cleaning up dishes that didn't really need cleaning. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded quickly, brushing it off, but her heart raced with the confusion of it all. She wasn't supposed to feel this way, yet pretending otherwise was getting harder each day. Every look, every small moment, carried a weight neither of them dared to name. Something was growing between them, quietly, naturally, but both were too afraid to step closer. The story was no longer just about an awkward encounter in the kitchen. It was becoming a story about timing, unspoken emotions, and the complicated space between what's right and what feels real. The days started to blend together, but the tension between them only grew stronger. Every shared glance seemed to carry a question that neither dared to ask. She told herself it was nothing, just a fleeting feeling, something that would pass if she ignored it long enough. But ignoring it only made it worse. The more she tried to keep things normal, the more everything felt charged, unpredictable, and fragile. One rainy afternoon, the house lost power. The sky was dark, thunder rolled softly in the distance, and the sound of rain filled the quiet rooms. She lit a candle in the kitchen, the same place where everything had first begun to change. The flickering light made shadows dance across the walls, and when he walked in, the small room suddenly felt even smaller. He smiled, trying to break the silence. "Guess we'll have to survive the night without Wi-Fi." She laughed lightly, trying to keep things casual, but her voice trembled. They talked for a while, about simple things, memories, plans, anything to keep their minds off what lingered beneath the surface. But the pauses between their words started to grow longer, heavier. At one point, she reached for a mug, and their hands brushed again. This time, neither of them pulled away immediately. It was such a small moment, yet it held everything they had been trying to avoid. Her breath caught. She stepped back quickly, pretending to look for something in a drawer. He didn't say anything, but the quiet said enough. Later that evening, when the rain softened, he found her standing by the window. The soft orange glow of the candle reflected in the glass, blurring her expression. "You've been distant lately," he said quietly. "Did I do something wrong?" She shook her head, but her voice came out strained. "No, you didn't. It's just, things are complicated." "Maybe they don't have to be," he replied, his tone gentle but certain. The words lingered in the air like a spark waiting to catch fire. She turned to face him, her heart racing. Every part of her wanted to say something honest, to admit the confusion, the pull, the fear, but she stopped herself. That night, she couldn't sleep. Every sound, the creak of the stairs, the whisper of the rain, felt amplified. Her thoughts chased her, asking questions she couldn't answer. Was this connection wrong? Or was it a reminder that she was still alive, still capable of feeling something real? By morning, she knew things couldn't stay the same any longer. A decision was waiting for her, one that could change everything. The next morning, the sky was still gray from the night's storm. She stood by the kitchen window, watching raindrops slide down the glass, lost in thought. Her mind wouldn't rest. Every word, every glance from the night before kept replaying in her head. It wasn't just confusion anymore, it was fear. Fear of what might happen if she let her heart decide instead of her reason. Just as she was about to pour herself some coffee, her phone rang. The name on the screen made her freeze. It was her late husband's brother, someone she hadn't spoken to in months. When she answered, his tone was casual at first, but then he said something that made her heart skip. "I heard he's been staying with you again." "That's good, he always looked up to you. You were like a second mother to him." The words hit harder than she expected. A second mother. It echoed in her mind long after the call ended. It was a reminder of how things were supposed to be, and how far they had drifted from that. She sat in silence for a long while, realizing just how complicated things had become. Later that afternoon, when he returned from work, he noticed the change in her mood immediately. "You seem upset," he said gently. She tried to brush it off, but he didn't let it go. Finally, she told him about the call. He listened quietly, his jaw tightening slightly. "You're not doing anything wrong," he said firmly. "We've just grown close. That's not something to be ashamed of." But deep down, she wasn't sure if that was true. The line between comfort and emotion had blurred so subtly that she didn't know where it began or ended anymore. The guilt was one thing, but what scared her more was how much she didn't want to let go. That evening, the second twist began to unfold. He got a message, someone from his past, someone she didn't know about. She caught a glimpse of the name on his phone before he turned it face down. His expression changed, the warmth in his eyes replaced by something distant. "Just an old friend," he said quickly, but his tone was uneven. Over the next few days, she noticed small shifts, missed dinners, unanswered questions, quiet phone calls in another room. For the first time, she wasn't sure what he was hiding. Was it guilt? Doubt? Or had something changed between them without her realizing it? Her heart wrestled with questions she didn't want to ask. The connection that once felt so certain now felt fragile, like glass that could shatter at the smallest touch. Still, she couldn't deny the pull. Even when she wanted to step back, something about him kept drawing her closer. One night, unable to sleep, she found herself standing outside his door. She almost knocked, but stopped herself just in time. She turned away, her chest tight, realizing she wasn't just afraid of losing him, she was afraid of what she might discover if she didn't. The tension had reached its breaking point, and both of them could feel it. Secrets, emotions, and timing, everything was colliding, pushing them toward a moment neither of them could avoid. She didn't sleep that night. The unanswered questions, the distant tone in his voice, the message from the mysterious contact, all of it kept replaying in her mind. By morning, she had made up her mind. She couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. When he walked into the kitchen, she was already there, her hands wrapped around a cup of cold coffee she hadn't even touched. "We need to talk," she said quietly. Her tone wasn't angry, just tired, the kind of tired that comes from carrying too many unspoken things. He hesitated, then nodded and sat across from her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was thick, filled with all the things they'd avoided for weeks. Finally, she looked him straight in the eye. "Who was that person you've been talking to?" He sighed, leaning back in his chair. "I should have told you earlier," he began. "It's someone I used to date. She reached out after hearing about my dad's passing. I didn't think it mattered because I didn't think any of this between us was supposed to matter." Her chest tightened. "But it does," she whispered before she could stop herself. The room went still. For the first time, they both said what they had been avoiding. It mattered. Whatever this was, the confusing, fragile, impossible, it was real. He stood up, pacing, his voice low but filled with emotion. "You think I don't know how complicated this is? Every day, I tell myself to stay away, to stop feeling this way, but I can't." Tears welled in her eyes. "And what do we do with that? Pretend it's not happening?" Before he could answer, there was a knock at the door. It startled them both. She opened it to find a delivery man holding an envelope. "It's from your husband's lawyer," he said before leaving. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a letter, one written by her late husband, dated just weeks before his death. She began to read aloud. In it, her husband had written about his worries for their future, how he hoped that one day she would find someone who could make her smile again. "You deserve to feel alive," the letter said. "Promise me you won't close your heart forever." By the time she finished, she was in tears. The room was silent, but the weight between them had shifted. The guilt, the doubt, it all seemed to fade for a moment. Life had given her a strange kind of permission. But just as she looked up at him, ready to speak, his phone buzzed again. This time, the message preview was visible. "I'm coming to see you today. We need to talk." He froze, and so did she. The storm outside began again, the wind rattling the windows as if echoing their thoughts. The moment of clarity vanished, replaced by a new wave of uncertainty. The rain had eased by morning, leaving behind a calm silence that felt different from before. She sat by the window, the unopened message still on his phone replaying in her mind. He came downstairs quietly, his expression thoughtful, almost distant. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The chaos of the last few days had settled into something quieter, something that finally allowed honesty to take its place. He broke the silence first. "It was nothing like you think," he said softly. "She just wanted to talk about closure, not about us." He paused, his voice steady. "But that message made me realize something. I can't keep running from what I feel. You've become more than just family, you're the only person who makes this house feel like home again." She looked at him, uncertain but moved. "You don't owe me anything," she whispered. "You deserve someone your age, someone who can give you a normal life." He smiled faintly. "Maybe what's normal isn't what we need. Maybe it's time we stop worrying about what others think." The moment lingered between them, full of quiet understanding. There was no rush, no desperate confession, just two people learning to accept what life had given them. The letter from her late husband had already said what she needed to hear. It was okay to move forward, even if it wasn't in the way she once imagined. Weeks passed, and the rhythm of their lives slowly returned. The strange tension was gone, replaced by something simpler: mutual care, companionship, and respect. Maybe they weren't meant to define what they had. Maybe it was enough to have found peace where there once was confusion. As the final evening sun set behind the kitchen window, she turned to him and smiled. "You know," she said softly, "some stories don't end, they just change shape." He nodded, his eyes gentle. "Then maybe this is just the beginning of ours." The camera fades on their quiet smiles, leaving the audience wondering, was this love, redemption, or something in between?